Hello ladies and gentlemen, this is Steven out. We are back with another movie review, and today ladies and gentlemen, I will be reviewing Footloose, released in 1984. This is one of the most iconic movies of the 80s, and before I get talking into the plot, the cast, the background, my personal thoughts on the matter, actually, let's just get into the background, shall we? Now, the background for this film, Footloose is a American musical drama film directed by Herbert Ross, written by Dean Pickford, produced by Louis J. Richmond and Craig Zundin. Probably butchering those names. Now, this was if I recall correctly, a Paramount film. And the influence for the film, where it comes from, actually comes from when they were creating this film. They actually one of the writers found out in the 70s that a small local town in like the south, like I guess a south or religious area, recently uplifted a dance band, as it been revealed that they outlawed dancing and rock and roll music for quite a while, but it was recently uplifted so these teens could have a prom. Naturally, thought this would be a good story for a movie, and of course, quickly wrote about it. Now, at the time, the film was released and received mixed reviews from the critics, but it was a huge hit at the box office, as it only had a budget of $8.2 million and made $80 million worldwide. Of course, this film was also famous for its soundtrack, with Kenny Loggins attached to it. Now, the film has definitely, gone on to be far more appreciated now, loved now. The critics and also the older generation weren't a huge fan of this film, but the younger generation loved it. And I think this is interesting because it does play a bit of a role into I would like to say that's the story as it's similar with its identity. But again, I'll get more to that into the good stuff later on in the review. But anyway, with the background out of the way, let's get into the casting. Now, the cast for this film, our main leads are Ren McCormick, portrayed by Kevin Bacon in one of his first acting roles, and then Ariel Moore, portrayed by Laura Singer. Now, honestly, these two have great chemistry. Well, who's really the better Ren McCormick and Ariel? Is it the characters from the first one or from the remake? For me, they're both great. They both have this such energy and dynamic really well. And I like how, Ariel is a bit teasy towards Ren, but grows to like him. Ren is kind of is intrigued by her, but doesn't really like her at first, but then grows to really like her. Again, I feel I kind of have a bit of the Ren in me with a girl I used to like. I didn't like at first, but grew to like her. My only regret was probably not giving the courage to ask her out, but, it is what it is. So I really just like them. Other great additions to the cast include the rest of the teen characters, which include Willard, played by Chris Penn. Then we got Rusty, who's portrayed by Sarah Jessica Parker. Woody by Joan Lohan. And then there's Wendy Jo, portrayed by Elizabeth Ghosty. Then there's then of course there's the bully of the film, Chuck Cranston. If I recall correctly, he is the bully of the town. Is it? Yeah, Chuck. Yes, it is. It is Chuck. He's the bully. And he is portrayed. Sorry, I'm really not feeling well today. Sorry, folks. I really should be feeling a lot better. But Chuck is portrayed by Jim Youngs. That's his name. Basically, these are like the teen characters we get to be within the film. But of course, another great thing I like is the Reverend character, Reverend Moore, portrayed by John Lithgow. Now, I actually know this actor from a few things. One, he was in Third Rock from the Sun, which was a comedy show. And I absolutely loved him in that show when he appeared. And, the fact that he's done serious work, he's done dramatic stuff, for me, I like how he just brings this passion and energy to the Reverend role. True, we're kind of against him with him preaching too much, in my opinion, but God, does he over time grow on us. I also liked his wife, Vi, portrayed by Diane West. I'm pretty sure that last name's supposed to be West, but I'm probably pronouncing it wrong. Truly sorry, folks. And again, he is just these two are, I love how you get this impression that they are a lovely, happy married couple, but they do have their moments where they argue, but again, relationships are known to do that. Then we have Ren's aunt and uncle, who, here, let me get these notes, because I actually have written them down, because I knew I would probably forget. Honestly, I'll be honest, compared to the remake, I find the aunt and uncle to be, here the aunt and uncle, honestly, to be not really much so forgettable, as I prefer the incarnations that were in the next film. But here they just come off as, honestly, people I think you're meant to loathe to hate, if that makes any sense. And especially the uncle, who is against Ren, for causing a ruckus and stir in the town. So again, you really love to hate him. Then there's this friend that Ren makes, his boss from work. I actually remember seeing him in a episode of TJ Hooker. And again, he's a minor character, but he still has a likable presence. Again, probably should know his casting. But here, there's something that the original had that the remake didn't. Ren's mother actually being a member in the plot. Here, the mother, Ethel McCormick, is portrayed by Frances Lee McCain. And again, in the remake, she is dead, and that's part of Ren's character. But it's great for that interpretation. But here, I do like how she's trying to be there for her son, but she, again, can fit into the town because she's from here, whilst Ren isn't. For him, this place is foreign to him. As much as he has clearly family roots here, he's never been here. So this is a foreign, and I do like how she is struggling to have her son be adapted to this environment that she's known all her life, but it's hard for Ren. I also want to point out something I really like in this film. Again, it should really be in the great moments, but for me, I love the scene where Ren is in I want to say a courtroom, but in front of a committee, as he's trying to get the dance uplifted, and he reads a line from the Bible. I like how the Reverend looks, and he's hearing his words. But here, how Kevin, as Ren McCormick, grabs the attention of the room in this scene, and it is just a fantastic scene. But anyway, I probably should have said in the great moments rather than here, but I just wanted to get out of the way because it is on my mind. But for me, it's one of the great scenes of the film, and if you ever get to see it, this film, and even in the remake, watch that scene. It's one of the best scenes of the film. Now, the plot for this film basically revolves around a teen by the name of Ren McCormick, played by Kevin Bacon, a teenager from Chicago who moves to a small town, and basically he finds out how, this town is very religious, it is outlawed dancing, and basically the excessive use of rock and roll. And basically, he is there to basically get the town to uplift the dance band in time for the local prom. And as a result, he goes into conflict with the local minister, who is very much in favor of this ban. And that's basically the plot. It's a simple premise, but honestly, sometimes having a simple premise is, for me, sometimes the best for a film. Now, great moments throughout this film, of course, are the dance sequences. I love the soundtrack. Kenny Loggins' Footloose is an absolute classic, and again, me and many people, especially when I'm out at a pub, every time this song plays, this is a song that's always going to guarantee to get me on the dance floor. The opening, though, with just the feet movement, again, just that a rocking soundtrack. It's really great, but that's not the only good song to come from this film. There's Free, which was also done by Kenny Loggins. There was I Need a Hero, another great, during the tractor scene, again, a great song. The Warehouse Dance has become infamous. And what I really love mostly about this is that even first off, the performances by the minister and, of course, Kevin Bacon as Ren McCormick, you know, is just fantastic. Because, Christoph, this is Kenny Rogers. Oh, not Kenny. Ren McCormick, sorry, is basically a teen that's come to this place, and he's very much a fish out of water. For him, this does not make sense here, as he's immediately pulled over, not for speeding, but for playing loud music. And also the fact you can't dance, all this. He's definitely a rebel, an unintentional rebel, and is shaking up the institution as these teens are kind of accepted it, though they really don't. I also love how, even though this film has these great scenes which are great on its own, there's a real story here with the fights between the generations. The old people view what they're doing as right, and the teens just will appreciate it someday. But the teens are viewing it as, we understand you're trying to protect us, but that's not always going to be the case. I also think this might be one of my first ever... Now, I remember watching this film growing up on the VHS. My mum used to play one of these many films all the time. And again, I still love the original. It's a classic. But the idea of religion being forced and imposed on you, and again, and as much as you can tell the minister really believes in this, he's not a bad person. As we find out, he's doing this because his son died, and this was all caused by a car wreck. And in a small town, when the death of a person you really care about, or a person you knew, it changes how the world around you is. And I've unfortunately have seen this not only with some friends, but even having people who I knew die at a very young age. And I'm not going to say their names because I don't think this is the time or the place to talk about it, but it really affects you. And I could see really now, more than ever, why it would affect, this whole religion thing. Another thing I also really love about this film is the female lead in this film, who is the character of Ariel. Now, she is this, kind of comes off as this bad girl, this rebel with a cause, but you can really understand why, because she is at these teen years and should be experiencing what are great things teens to do, but these adults, they're kind of conforming her to what they want. And again, you can see where she's going, but and what I really appreciate about this is, even though she's a bad girl, she's not that much of an evil person. She's just lost. And especially, I don't think she ever got the counseling she needed when her brother passed. And arguably, I don't think the minister did either. And again, the minister at the end, of course, he does. Even though the ban doesn't get fully lifted, he does support this dance that happens when, he gets to really know Ren McCormick, as the two have a lot in common. They both experienced a trouble in their past. Another thing I think this film really does really well is, just the townspeople, how, especially the old generation, against this. And again, I like how Ren, he's trying to fit in, but every door is getting slammed in his face. And again, the townspeople are just getting worse by this. This is especially in one scene. When he gets there, they talk about this book and how it's awful, but Ren's read it, and he says, no, it's actually a good book. Slaughterhouse 5, it's just a classic. And they say, Tom Sawyer is a classic. Obviously, the generations are definitely divided here. And I also just like, another thing I really love about this film is, again, with the dance sequences, again, are great in its own right. But, I also like the supporting character of Woody. He's a great addition to the film. And, he's this guy that, the cowboy hat, the accent, he, just really, wins you over. And, he's a nice contrast, almost a buddy to, well, to Ren McCormick. There's a great buddy thing there, and I really appreciate that. It works really well as a contemporary. But despite this, and how much I love this film, obviously huge nostalgia for, is there something about this film that I don't like? Well, um, yeah, there is. There's one thing I could really say. Well, first off, I want to go back, and I realized the character Woody was not the character I was referring to, but was actually Willard, not Woody. Woody's another supporting character, but not the one I was really after. But the criticism I have with this film is a little bit of pacing. When you compare the remake, I appreciate the remake for having a much more smoother thing, and it doesn't feel as dragged, as I noticed the pacing issues when I went to rewatch it. And again, and as a person who doesn't mind films with not a great with the pacing, I can like it, but I can see why it would put off others. So there's actually some things I think the remake might have actually improved on here. One is, again, the pacing. The second was, I think they changed something to Ren's character, which made it work. Because in this film, he moves here with his mother. In the remake, he moves because his mother's recently passed and his father's run off. In this, it's, I think if I recall correctly, though I might be wrong, correct me if I'm wrong, the father still, I think, either dies or runs off in this. If you can remember the answer, please write it down. I probably should have had this on notes, but honestly, my head's a little fuzzy, so because I accidentally hit my head, so the notes and the info on my head's a bit fuzzy. But they changed that to his character, which explains him being more of a rebel and with a more of a believable angst in the remake. But it also should not be denied that he wouldn't have that if the original didn't give him such a great foundation to work on. Another thing I think I didn't really like in the original was the new father character, the father figure that Ren has. When he moves with his uncle, and his uncle is very much against him, and basically goes with the town. In the remake, the uncle and the family that he's living with, or his uncle and aunt, are actually far better in the remake, and actually more supportive and make him more likable. Here, they're not. But I guess that's kind of what we're supposed to. Again, remakes are supposed to change things, but still try to provide a different experience. Again, which one is better, the original or the remake? Again, I said this in my top 10 teen movies. They're both great. They both have their pros and their cons, but they're both great, and I think they're both as equal. But it's clear that the remake would not exist if it wasn't for the original. So, again, the criticism I'm going to say is really the pacing and how the remake tweaked on some of the characters. Who knows, if I feel like it, I might actually get around to reviewing the remake if people are interested. So with that said, I've just given you my own personal thoughts on the film, its pros, its cons. So, what is my final verdict? Well, ladies and gentlemen, for the 1984 Footloose, I give it 4 out of 5 stars. For me, the soundtrack is great. The dance songs in this are fantastic. The pacing might be an issue for some people, but for me, it doesn't. But yeah, I can notice it. For me, this film is just a great time capsule of the early 80s, and I like the subtle context of the older generation and the younger generation, viewing what's best, but not really opening up and coming together. Again, I really love what they've done here. This film is a time capsule to the early 80s, and it's a fun ride, and I can see why all these years later, it is still fondly talked about, it is still fondly reviewed, and people still dance to Kenny Loggins' Footloose every time it turns on at a pub, or at any random dance event. It's still catchy even after all these years. And there we have it. That was the Steven Hour movie review. Join in next time, folks, when I'll be reviewing the Buddy Holly story. So until next time, this has been the Steven Hour. Ladies and gentlemen, have a good day, and so long for now.